When Bruce Lee emerged in the 1970s, he was undoubtedly the coolest person on earth. As his movies began captivating audiences, I, like many others, was completely blown away. The 1970s marked a golden era for Chinese kung fu movies, and at the center of this movement was a young martial artist named Bruce Lee. Charismatic, fierce, and capable of performing stunts so incredible they seemed unreal, Lee left audiences in awe. If not for the footage, his feats would have been unbelievable. This is the story of one man who blurred the line between make-believe and reality, beginning with one of his most fascinating stunts, the one-inch punch. Bruce Lee's movies introduced a fusion of action and martial arts that captured imaginations worldwide. He became the bridge to American culture in a way few could have anticipated, embodying a unique fusion of East and West. At the height of his fame, his demonstrations were nothing short of legendary. In one such instance, the arena was packed, and the crowd waited in eager anticipation for the first move. On the mat stood Bruce Lee, a sparring partner, and several martial arts students, all with eyes fixed on the master. Standing just inches from his opponent, Lee exuded confidence, calculating his every move. A chair on the stage hinted at his prior experience and his intent to avoid harming his partner. At the perfect moment, Lee thrust his fist forward, sending his opponent flying back into the strategically placed chair. This was the one-inch punch, a strike so extraordinary that, even now, its power is hard to believe. Imagine standing just 1 inch away from your opponent and delivering a punch so forceful it knocks them off the ground. The one-inch punch wasn't about raw strength, muscle mass, or physical dominance. It was a skill rooted in mastery, knowledge, and discipline, qualities that defined Bruce Lee. Fans and martial artists alike have tried to walk the same path of dedication to replicate the move, but its simplicity hides its complexity. Without the recorded footage, this technique would seem mythical. The secret of the one-inch punch lies not in brute force but in the biomechanics of motion. Unlike conventional power strikes, this move relies on millisecond precision and the synchronization of the entire body. For Bruce Lee, it began with explosive knee extensions, transferring momentum through his legs, hips, shoulders, and finally his fist. Jessica Rose, a biomechanical researcher at Stanford University, extensively analyzed this move. According to her, the rapid motion that starts in Lee's legs and cascades through his body explains the strike's power. Everything happens so quickly that Lee almost appears superhuman. Though Bruce Lee is widely regarded as the most impressive martial artist to ever live, the one-inch punch is particularly challenging to replicate. While it appears to be a simple strike, the results defy expectation. Upon contact, the punch combines the force of some of the body's largest muscles into a tiny, concentrated area on the opponent's body. This precision, rather than brute strength or size, defines the move. If the one-inch punch wasn't already impressive enough, Lee's infamous two-finger push-ups showcase an entirely different level of physical prowess. This incredible demonstration, like the one-inch punch, solidifies Bruce Lee's legacy as a martial arts legend. Bruce Lee was known for his extraordinary physical prowess, achieving feats that still astonish people today. Among his many accomplishments, one of the most impressive was his ability to perform 1,500 push-ups in a single stretch without breaking. Even more remarkable, he could place his entire body weight on just 2 fingers and perform 200 consecutive push-ups. While most people struggle to complete even 10 standard push-ups, Bruce Lee's 2-finger push-ups showcased his superhuman abilities, a feat that remains unmatched to this day. This record, certified by the Guinness Book of World Records, has stood unbroken despite numerous attempts to surpass it. For instance, Iranian martial artist Ali Valizadeh Khaji's Shohi set a record for the most 2-finger push-ups completed in 1 minute, achieving 74, but he still fell short of Lee's legendary accomplishment. Similarly, in 1995, Paul Lynch from the UK set a Guinness World Record for the most consecutive 1-finger push-ups, completing 124. However, even though this was a different category, it still couldn't compare to Bruce Lee's achievements, solidifying his status as a once-in-a-lifetime athlete with unparalleled abilities. Bruce Lee's physical prowess extended beyond just his 2-finger push-up record. As the story goes, he could also perform 400 push-ups using one hand. These feats were not just for show but were deeply intertwined with his martial arts philosophy, Jeet Kune Do. As a master martial artist, Lee integrated a diverse range of fighting techniques, including Tai Chi, Wing Chun, street fighting, and boxing. He first demonstrated his extraordinary two-finger push-ups at the Long Beach International Karate Championships in 1964, leaving the crowd in awe and cementing his reputation as one of the greatest martial artists of all time. Even renowned bodybuilding expert Joe Weider praised Lee's physique as one of the most defined he had ever seen. Beyond his incredible strength and agility, Bruce Lee was also known for his legendary fight scenes in films, such as his iconic battles against Chuck Norris in the Roman Colosseum and his 10-on-1 fight in Fist of Fury. However, a lingering question persists: did Bruce Lee fight in real life? The answer is yes, although most of his real-life fights were not captured on camera, as Lee preferred to keep them private. Fortunately, there is footage of one fight during the 1967 Long Beach International Karate Championships in California where Lee sparred with some of his top students. While this was a controlled sparring session rather than a full contact match, it offers a glimpse into Lee's skill and technique. The slower pace and lighter strikes in this footage, compared to his lightning-fast movie moves, can be attributed to California law, which required sparring gear for such demonstrations. This rare footage adds another layer to Bruce Lee's incredible legacy, highlighting his unmatched talent and dedication to martial arts. Bruce Lee's mastery is vividly evident in the fight, where he is marked with white cords throughout. His movements display an effortless grace, maintaining a calculated distance from his opponent while ducking and dodging every shot with ease. Standing like a trained killer, Lee carefully studies his opponent's every move, seemingly predicting what they will do before they act. His attacks are characterized by quick and precise movements that consistently hit their mark. Imagine a fighter landing every punch and kick during a bout. It sounds almost impossible, yet with Bruce Lee, it becomes entirely plausible. While his opponent desperately lashed out at perceived openings, Lee's strategy was deliberate. He baited his adversary and immediately launched counterattacks that left them nearly incapacitated. From this footage, it is clear that Lee was calm and calculated, perhaps even more so than he appeared in his movies. His fighting style was distinctly unique, blending multiple martial arts into a lethal combination, unlike the singular approaches common among his contemporaries. This innovative style wasn't limited to cinematic displays. Lee utilized these skills in real-life combat situations as well. One such instance was the legendary fight between Bruce Lee and Wong Jack-man. The story of this encounter gained prominence when it was featured in the July 1980 edition of Official Karate magazine. Told by renowned martial artist Wong Jack-man, the account detailed a real-life duel between him and Bruce Lee. If not for its documentation, the authenticity of such a fight might have been doubted, given the secrecy surrounding most of Lee's battles. Unlike many top fighters who showcased their skills in massive arenas, Lee preferred to keep his significant fights behind closed doors. However, these stories couldn't remain hidden forever. This particular fight took place during the winter of 1964 at a small kung fu school in Oakland, California. In the center of the room stood a 24-year-old Bruce Lee, weighing approximately 140 pounds and standing 5 feet 7 inches. Though not yet the global martial arts icon he would become, his skill was undeniable. Opposing him was Wong Jack-man, a slightly taller fighter at 5 feet 10 inches and 135 pounds, also of Chinese descent. The fight was conducted without rules, referees, safety equipment, or any formal documentation. The primary account comes from Bruce Lee's wife, Linda, who was one of the 13 people present that day. In her book, Bruce Lee, The Man Only I Knew, Linda described the fight in detail. Both fighters began by bowing formally before launching into combat. Wong employed his Wing Chun style with a series of straight punches, but Lee's speed and power quickly overwhelmed him. Lee's punches landed with such force that Wong's supporters attempted to intervene within minutes of the fight starting. However, James Lee insisted the duel continue. The intensity escalated to the point where Wong turned and ran from Bruce Lee's relentless onslaught, demonstrating the sheer dominance and prowess Lee exhibited even at this early stage in his career. Bruce soon caught up with Wong and, with one swift motion, brought him to the ground. Wong surrendered, and the fight ended almost as quickly as it began. The victory was swift, highlighting Bruce's incredible power. However, according to Linda, the fight also motivated Lee to train even harder to refine his unique fighting style. This story has been hotly debated over the years, particularly by Wong himself, who denied being beaten badly, begging for his life, or being tackled to the ground. Sadly, the only person who could truly confirm or refute the account passed away just a few years after the fight occurred. When discussing Bruce Lee's extraordinary skills, it is impossible not to mention his favorite weapon of all time, the nunchaku. Master of this iconic weapon, Lee featured the nunchaku in 5 of his most popular movies, making it synonymous with his name. However, many people are unaware that Lee initially despised the nunchaku. Although the weapon had been part of martial arts for around 400 years, it was not a common choice in the 1960s and 1970s. While effective in combat, nunchaku were not considered cinematic, as martial artists like Jimmy Wang Yu and Chang Pei often preferred the Chinese sword. Everything changed in 1971 when Bruce Lee introduced nunchaku to mainstream audiences, and this shift was thanks to one man, Dan Inosanto. Inosanto, a prominent martial artist who trained regularly with Lee during his heyday, first suggested incorporating nunchaku into Lee's movies. Initially, Lee dismissed the idea, calling the weapon a worthless piece of junk. But Inosanto persisted, and eventually, Lee agreed to give it a try. Just 3 months later, Lee had mastered the nunchaku, wielding it as if he had trained with it his entire life. According to Inosanto, Lee first used the nunchaku in a movie in 1971's Fist of Fury. The action sequences in that film alone gave the weapon massive exposure, instantly making it cool again. Lee's skill with nunchaku was further showcased in the unfinished movie Game of Death, where he even had a nunchaku fight with Inosanto himself. Although the film was never completed before Lee's death, the released footage demonstrated his unmatched mastery of the weapon. As impressive as these movie scenes were, they paled in comparison to real-life footage of Lee playing ping-pong with nunchaku instead of a racket. Using his extraordinary reflexes and superhuman abilities, Lee countered every attack and defeated a professional player in his own sport, all while using a weapon completely unsuited to the game. While Lee made it look effortless, the reality is that nunchaku are incredibly challenging to wield. Many have tried and failed to wield this simple but lethal weapon, with many more walking away with injuries. Speaking of lethal weapons, did you know that Bruce Lee once broke an opponent's skull with his bare hands? One such unforgettable encounter was Bruce Lee vs. Yoichi Nakachi, a story written by Bruce Lee himself in his diary, dating back to 1960. The account takes us to the Seattle Edison Technical School, where Bruce was challenged to a fight by a Japanese martial artist known as Yoichi Nakachi. True to his nature, Bruce Lee, who never backed down from a fight, accepted the challenge. What no one anticipated was that this fight would become the bloodiest real-life battle of his career. On November 1, 1960, Bruce Lee and his students had just concluded Kung Fu and Judo performances at the Seattle Edison Technical School. During the event, Lee introduced Chinese Kung Fu and described it as superior to Japanese Karate and Chinese Jiu-Jitsu. Among the audience was Yoichi Nakachi, a Japanese black belt who took immediate exception to Lee's statement about karate originating in China. Nakachi countered Lee's claim by asserting that Chinese Kung Fu was too soft to be lethal. To prove his point, he challenged Bruce Lee to a fight. Since Bruce was a student at the school and didn't want to cause trouble, he initially declined the challenge. However, his disciples, eager to see him prove himself in combat, kept pushing him to accept. Nakachi was relentless in provoking Lee, even sending one of his own disciples to deliver the message, "If you want to enter the hospital, accept the challenge." This provocation pushed Bruce Lee to his breaking point, and he finally agreed to the fight. The task of arranging the duel was assigned to Jesse Glover, who chose the YMCA handball field in downtown Seattle as the venue. The stage was set for what would become a legendary clash. When the day arrived, only a few spectators were allowed to witness the fight, which would go down in history as one of the most impressive martial arts battles ever recorded. The fight was brief but brutal. A single kick to Nakachi's nose caused blood to splatter everywhere, and within seconds, Nakachi was kneeling on the ground while Bruce Lee stood victorious. Nakachi looked lifeless, and for a moment, even Lee feared he had killed him. Nakachi's face was so damaged it resembled an impact from a baseball bat, and the left side of his head was swollen to the point that his eyes were barely visible. Astonishingly, the entire fight lasted only 11 seconds, during which Bruce Lee utterly demolished the karate master, nearly ending his life in the process. Despite this overwhelming victory, Bruce Lee chose not to gloat. Instead, he urged everyone present to avoid speaking about the fight to preserve Nakache's dignity. This gesture reflected Lee's character and his respect for the martial arts, even in the aftermath of such a decisive and violent confrontation. If punching a hole in a person's head doesn't sound crazy enough, wait until you hear about the time Bruce Lee broke a 45-kilogram sandbag with his kicks. But before diving into that incredible feat, consider Joe Rogan's perspective on Bruce Lee's legacy. Rogan, a longtime admirer of Lee, has often highlighted how unbelievable some of Bruce Lee's moments would seem if they weren't recorded. In an episode with comedian Brian Redban, Rogan credited Lee's contribution to the sport that evolved into mixed martial arts, MMA. Many believe Bruce Lee was instrumental in the birth of MMA, and it's not a far-fetched claim. According to Rogan, the movie Enter the Dragon marked the first time martial arts in such a form was witnessed by the public, laying the foundation for what would become a dominant force in sports entertainment. In another episode with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Rogan described Lee as a trailblazer whose charisma and extraordinary talent captured global attention in his tragically short life. Do you believe Bruce Lee truly kick-started mixed martial arts? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Bruce Lee's kicks were as legendary as his powerful punches, nunchaku skills, and lightning-fast reflexes. One particularly astonishing story involves Lee kicking a 45-kilogram sandbag so hard during training that it broke apart. He used a special technique called the super sidekick, which completely destroyed the heavy training bag. For those doubting the story, this record was certified by the Guinness Book of World Records, confirming it actually happened. Another incredible tale recounts how Lee kicked a 135-kilogram sandbag 5 meters into the air. The sheer force required to propel such a weight upwards is unimaginable, let alone doing it with a single kick. Without recordings, these feats might sound like pure myth. Bruce Lee's speed wasn't just powerful, it was otherworldly. So much so that movie directors struggled to capture his moves on film. When The Green Hornet premiered in September 1966, it introduced Bruce Lee to a much wider audience, spreading awareness of Chinese martial arts. Despite being a sidekick in the movie, Lee's intense fighting skills overshadowed the lead character, capturing everyone's attention. However, filming his action scenes proved challenging. His movements were so fast that cinematographers couldn't keep up, resulting in blurry footage. As detailed in Matthew Polly's book, Bruce Lee, A Life, Lee was confident his kung fu skills would shine on screen, only to be disappointed when the first footage showed his blows moving too fast for the camera to capture properly. Because of this, the scenes had to be filmed all over again, and this time, Lee had to slow down his movements significantly just so the kung fu would look better on television. This was very important, especially since kung fu wasn't really popular in American productions at the time. Most of the fighting scenes were patterned toward more Western fighting styles, which followed a much slower pace and consisted mostly of punches. The cameras filmmakers worked with didn't have a problem filming these scenes, but that changed when Bruce Lee came into the picture. To prevent this kind of issue in his future movies, Bruce Lee shot them at a higher frame rate. This approach allowed him to avoid slowing down his moves in films like The Big Boss and Enter the Dragon, giving him the freedom to deliver a more electrifying performance every time. Bruce Lee's superhuman exercise routine was no secret. Every single achievement he recorded as a martial artist could be traced back to his rigorous training regimen. For cardio, Lee prioritized running, covering 2 to 6 miles on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. On the other days, he would cycle approximately 10 miles, followed by an additional 20 minutes of jump rope. Some experts believed he alternated between running and cycling to avoid the monotony of repeating the same routine daily. Flexibility was another cornerstone of Lee's training, allowing the relatively short martial artist to perform feats like kicking a man as tall as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who stood 7 feet 2 inches, in the head. To achieve such flexibility, Lee pushed his body beyond its natural limits with constant stretching. His routine included high kicks, forward bends, side bends, waist twisting, alternate splits on chairs, and wrestlers bridging, among other stretches. Performing these exercises almost daily helped him deliver impressive performances both on screen and in the ring. Beyond these routines, martial arts training was the most significant part of his regimen. Those who knew him claimed he spent more time perfecting his martial arts skills than on anything else. This was the primary reason he looked more like an athlete than a bodybuilder. His training schedule was highly disciplined. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, he focused on punching, practicing shadow boxing, heavy bag work, footwork drills, and occasionally sparring with other fighters. The remaining days were dedicated to perfecting his kicks, using the heavy bag, practicing footwork, and sparring just as he did for punch training. While there are no known pictures of Bruce Lee lifting weights, it is well documented that he incorporated weightlifting into his routine. However, his goal was never to enhance his appearance but to build the functional muscle required for real-life combat. His strength was legendary, as demonstrated in instances like when he reportedly dislocated a man's shoulder with a single slap. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.